Hi guys, it's Rose and welcome back to another Vegan Talks video. So today I am going to be reacting to Jubilee's latest vegan video. So this is a vegans versus meat eaters middle ground video, which is basically where they take two different groups of people from two different kind of opposing viewpoints and they bring them together and they ask questions and then people discuss. So it's kind of like a little debate situation. And so we're going to react to it. It is quite long, so I'm not going to be able to react to everything, but I'll try to respond to the kind of main points that I want to respond to, okay? Before we jump in, just a reminder that I am hosting two vegan trips this year. So I'm hosting two trips in my countries of Canada and Korea, okay? So the first one is in the Canadian Rockies. We're doing a hiking and camping trip. As you might know, I live in Canada and the Rockies is actually in my backyard. It's about an hour away from where I live. So it's really, really awesome to be able to host a trip right there in my home. And yes, it is as beautiful as you have seen in pictures, if not more beautiful in person. So if you want to visit the Canadian Rockies with me, make sure you sign up for that. And I'm also hosting a trip in my home country of South Korea. So I'm doing a vegan food tour in Seoul, Busan, and Gyeongju. I'm super excited for both those trips, so make sure you sign up. There are limited spots available. Linked below, guys. And one more announcement, there's only like a couple of days left of the Bold Bundle, which is a 99% off discount deal. The Bold Bundle is basically a collection of over 130 plant-based ebooks, guides, and courses, and it's sold for only $50 total. So I've included two of my ebooks, which is the Everyday Asian Recipes ebook and my most recent Vegan Sushi at Home ebook. So both of those, if you bought those separately, would be $25 each. So for the price of two ebooks, you can get over 130 more ebooks. And this Bold Bundle is actually extra special because there's actually full-length, like published cookbooks that are included in this bundle, but in digital form. So if you guys are looking for some inspiration for Veganuary, or if you know someone that's going vegan, or if you just want some extra inspo, you want some extra recipes, and just like so many different resources, check out the Bold Bundle. This actually expires on January 4th, so not that much time left for you to grab it, okay? So I think there's like 1 or 2 days left. So make sure you get it now. Again, it's $50. It's a 99% off discount because if you bought everything separately, it would be $4,500. So make sure you don't miss out on the Bold Bundle. And yeah, link is below. It is time to now react to the Jubilee vegans versus meat eaters debate.
Animals are put on earth to be eaten by humans. Step forward if you agree with the prompt.
Of course, 3 out of the 4 meat eaters agree with the prompt. A, I hate this prompt because I think it's just so stupid. But B, how narcissistic do you have to be to think that animals that we share this planet with are only put on this earth to be eaten by humans? That's just the most narcissistic and self-obsessed statement I've ever heard in my life. There are so many animals on this planet. Just because we happen to culturally eat some of them does not mean that their entire purpose was to be put on this earth to be eaten by us. That's so ridiculous. What if an alien species came down on us and started eating us? Does that mean that we were put on this earth to be eaten by this alien species? So stupid.
So I'm Bella. I am a carnivore. So basically that means I've been on a carnivore diet of eating only animal foods for the past 6 years. I was also vegan for 6 years right before I went carnivore. So I feel like I do have a pretty good sense of how I feel, my health, and the purpose of the food that I'm eating.
Listen, to the untrained naked eye, you may think that it is very strange for someone that was once vegan to go carnivore, but I have seen this happen quite often, usually amongst extremely restrictive eaters, right? I don't know what kind of vegan diet she was following. As far as I know, I think she's quite vague with the way that she describes how she was eating, and I'm sure she's doing that for a reason. Most of the time, what happens often is that people that follow usually a really high raw plant-based diet, they often will go back to eating animal products, but not just that, they will go to the extreme other side of going like mostly carnivore, if not fully carnivore, meaning eating only animal products. So some people, again, might find that to be kind of shocking, but I see that as two sides of the same similar coin. Basically, both diets are based on pseudoscience, not actually accepted by, you know, actual scientific literature, nutrition information that we have, very much based on bro science, internet science, and they're both different forms of extremely restrictive eating. So in my opinion, it's not that shocking because if you are like a raw plant-based eater, then you already have, in my opinion, very orthorexic tendencies unless you have some very good reason to cut out like cooked foods. But there's no actual reason to cut out cooked foods. So in my opinion, for someone to do that, you would have to be quite orthorexic or someone that's like really, really obsessed with clean eating to do that. It's not too shocking that someone that follows that kind of diet realizes that that diet doesn't work for them because it probably doesn't work for most people. then it's not that shocking for them to go to the other side of trying out the other extreme diet, which is carnivore.
So when I was vegan, I actually lost my period. So I was no longer fertile. I had extreme skin issues, psoriasis, cystic acne. I had also mental health issues. I used to be a classical pianist. I just remember going on stage and I couldn't remember the pieces that I was supposed to perform. And I was panicking. I was like, what is going on with my memory? Why can't I focus in the practice room? And why am I feeling so nervous and anxious right before stepping out? So to me, that says a lot about whether or not the foods I'm eating are supporting me.
So we hear this time and time again. I lost my period. I have brain fog, memory loss. Now, these are real things. Like, I'm not denying that that's what actually happened to her. Like, I believe that. But the problem is, guys say this all the time, veganism is not a diet, okay? Veganism is not a diet because there are so many different ways of eating vegan, okay? You can't just say, I ate a vegan diet, didn't work, it's the worst, lost my memory, lost my period. Okay, but like, what did you eat? Because you could say you were a vegan and eat 1,000 calories a day. You could say you were a vegan, eat only bananas every day. You could say you're a vegan and eat vegan junk food every day. You could say you're a vegan, eat whole foods plant-based, and even whole foods plant-based is not giving you the full information. Veganism is not like this one specific way of eating. And this type of rhetoric, this type of language that she's using makes it seem as though this is just gonna be the experience. Like veganism is just unhealthy. Right? What were you eating? And the fact that this person is now a carnivore makes me again feel like you have some sort of restrictive way of eating. So it wouldn't be very surprising to me if she did have a restrictive form of eating. Okay? And if you lose your period, yeah, that is a bad sign. Okay? That's a bad sign that you are not getting your nutrients. You usually lose your period when you start to have nutritional deficiencies, right? It actually happens often in the raw food movement because it's very hard for people to follow a fully raw diet and eat adequate amounts of food and get the adequate nutrition. So a lot of people in the raw food movement actually do lose their period. In other vegan diets with actual cooked food, actual balanced diets, I don't believe that that is a big problem. I myself have never lost my period on a plant-based diet. My period is very regular. I've been vegan now for over 10 years. I literally get my period like on the dot every single month, not a problem. Okay? Losing your period is not a symptom of veganism. It's a symptom of malnutrition.
So when I stopped the vegan diet and went fully carnivore, the difference in my mental health, in my confidence, in my fertility as well was just night and day.
But it's like, listen, again, why did you go from vegan to fully carnivore? Where is the middle ground? Do you see the red flags? It's like anyone that actually has a healthy sort of mindset when it comes to food and nutrition, if they were having issues with their vegan diet and they wanted to quit because they probably, let's face it, they probably were not vegan, they went plant-based for the health benefits, okay? I'm getting all kinds of red flags here. They went plant-based for the health benefits. They realized, oh, this is not working for me because, again, I'm assuming she was not following a very healthy, nutritionally adequate plant-based diet. So then instead of saying, hey, why don't I just reintroduce some animal products into my diet, which I mean, I wouldn't do. I would probably try everything necessary to stay within a plant-based diet. But again, I'm just thinking from her perspective. Instead of saying, why don't I just add a few animal products into my diet, see how I feel, you go from vegan to fully carnivore? Like, why?
I personally have been for the last 7 or so years, but basically my whole life, I've fed my family off of almost 100% wild game of some type, whether it be deer or elk or pigs or ducks. You definitely have a closer feel to what you're consuming when you have full control over it. You're not buying it from somebody at the grocery store that who knows where it came from, how it was handled before it got there. And yeah, I think they're here for you to eat. I don't think strictly for us. I mean, whoever needs that protein takes that protein, and it's been that way for millions of years.
Just because something has been a certain way for millions of years does not mean that is the thing that has to be the way forever, especially when it comes to our existence. The way that we live, it's completely different than the way that we lived millions of years ago, okay? Even hundreds of years ago. We cannot keep eating this way. The fact of the matter is, people like this will always talk about like hunting. They'll always still probably talk against factory farming, right? The way that he talks, he's like, okay, he hunts all his food, which, you know, it is better than consuming factory farm food, but everyone cannot do that, okay? It is not realistic for all of us to start hunting all our food. And if we did, it would be extremely detrimental to wildlife if we were like, okay, let's all hunt our food instead of using factory farming, which obviously I'm against, but but it's like, these are not viable options. Continuously doing factory farming, which as much as I hate, but is used as an efficient way of feeding millions of people tons of animal products every single day, that's not sustainable. But what's also not sustainable is taking everyone off of those factory farmed products and saying, hey, hunt your own food. Okay, let's see how that works out. This is something that only a few people might be able to do. And as soon as tons of people start doing it, we're gonna see so many issues with our ecosystem and wildlife. And this idea that just because we have been eating animal products to survive for however many years, that somehow these animals were put on this earth for us, is just like the most ridiculous thing I have heard.
Remember that we are at the top of the food chain, and being at the top of the food chain, it doesn't mean that we can just go on a rampage and do whatever we want.
We are not at the top of the food chain. I don't understand where you are getting this information from. If we were in a safari amongst other animals, you really think we're at the top of the food chain? We are the top predator? Take away our guns, take away our weapons. You think that we're gonna win against a lion? You think that a lion wouldn't, you know, rip us up open to pieces? Have you never heard of an apex predator? We adopt the kind of cultures and traditions and norms of whatever family, whatever society that we are born into. That is why we eat meat, because it has been passed on, okay, passed on, and we are born, and then that's basically how we live our lives, unless told otherwise, and unless later on you decided not to, which is what happened in my case. I decided to stop eating meat. But it's not because, oh, we're at the top of the food chain, therefore we have this response. No, you made that up to justify all the things that you already do and you already want to do, which is eating meat.
When we take care of the animals, and like you said, you eat a wild game, you understand the cycle of life of the animals.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's just...
Just say you eat meat because you want to eat meat. Stop with this, oh, I want to take care of the animal, I love the animal. You wouldn't kill someone that you love, okay? So it doesn't make sense. How many times do I have to say this? It does not make sense for you to kill something that you love and then say that you have respect for it, especially when there are options available. Humans can eat a fully plant-based diet and thrive, actually. Now, there might be some very odd cases in which that might not be possible, but don't give me this, oh, I love animals so much, I must respect them in every cycle, whilst you literally are okay with the slaughter of them. Make it make sense.
Honoring this beautiful relationship where we nourish and take care of the animals. In turn, nature rewards us by nourishing and taking care of us as well.
Nature rewards us by nourishing and taking care of us, aka we eat the animal, and then we want to feel good about it, so let me throw in some really, fuzzy, nice language to make myself feel better. Just say you eat animals, Just say you like to eat animals.
I think it's incredibly self-centered to say that animals have been put on this earth to feed us. I don't think we should act like the world revolves around us as humans. And you say, that we have the power as humans to raise animals for food and to farm them. We also have the power not to do that. We have the power to treat them with kindness and compassion. And I am a factory farm investigator, a slaughterhouse investigator. I go into these places. 99% of the animal products in the United States come from factory farms. And I've been...
This point exactly. It's like the great majority, 99% of animal products eaten in the United States and probably many other places around the world are from factory farms. So when you promote the eating of animal products, but then you also say, oh, but I'm kind of against factory farming, which is what a lot of these carnivore people say. They're against factory farming because somehow they are in a privileged position to be able to purchase very locally grown, non-factory farmed meat, whatever. But they say that they're against factory farming when 99% of the animal products eaten in the States is from factory farming. So how do you imagine that we're going to be able to feed the population the amount of animal products that you promote? How do you imagine that we can feed the population on non-factory farmed animals? Why do you think factory farming exists? It exists because it is an efficient way of feeding a lot of people a lot of meat. Okay, it's an efficient way of producing a lot of meat, which means tons of torture, tons of suffering. So that's the reason for the existence of factory farming. So when you take away factory farming, a lot of people will just have to eat mostly plant-based because it is impossible to feed so many people, so many animal products at a low cost that is environmentally somewhat sustainable.
So to say that animals are placed on this earth just to be eaten, it's like saying you agreed with the fact that black people were considered just to be slaves. They were only here just for slavery.
A lot of people had this issue with this guy bringing up slavery. I personally understand what he's saying. What he's saying is basically there was a time on planet Earth, or there was a time in recent history where people thought certain races of people were literally put on this earth and they were meant to be slaves. That was the excuse that people gave. So I personally would rather not use this form of argument, just because I know people get immediately triggered when they hear this term and they immediately don't listen to what you have to say and they think that you are trying to insult humans. What he's trying to say, I think, is that there's always a time in history where we think certain groups of individuals, whether they are animals, whether they are humans of whatever kind, we justify their oppression by saying things like, oh, they were born to do this for us. That's why they're here. That was always like the excuse given. I think we need to understand from our past the things that we are doing in the current moment of time that we are blinded to, because back then people were blinded to racism, for example. Now people are blinded to speciesism. And guys, if you don't know what speciesism is, it's basically a form of discrimination based on species. So us thinking that we are better because we are of a certain species, and then any other species is below us, and therefore that justifies any sort of negative treatment, any sort of oppression, any sort of extreme cruelty that we put on the other species that we would never justify if it was our species or a specific kind of species. Speciesism is basically the reason why we think it's completely justified to kill cows, chickens, and pigs, do whatever we want with them. We think it's completely fine. Killing them is fine as long as it's done humanely. Yet, when you switch the animal, let's say to a dog or a cat, all of a sudden we're having a very different conversation. Let alone if we switch the victim to a human, then it's a completely different conversation. So this is called speciesism. Look it up and really, really sink into that uncomfortable feeling. If you're not vegan yet, really sink into that uncomfortable feeling of learning what speciesism is and understanding. Because when I first learned it, it was very uncomfortable. I was eating meat still, but I was like, oh my God, I did not realize this is something that we do, but it is so something that we do. And this justifies all the things, all the horrible things that we do to other animals, because we can just say, oh, we're human, so we can justify everything, when it would never be justified if we were doing that to another human. And this whole prompt is basically a super speciesist prompt, which is, oh, animals were put on this earth for us to eat them. That's extremely speciesist. It's us basically being like, oh, because we're humans, we are above everything else, to the point where all the other animals are basically only here for our consumption.
And I think if there's middle ground here that we can all agree on, it's that factory farming is unethical. I personally do not support factory farming. I do not purchase from places that support factory farming.
I told you, all these people that follow these carnivore diets will say, oh, I'm against factory farming. I'm against factory farming. So how do you suppose that we are going to feed our species enough animal products to follow a carnivore diet without the use of factory farming? How do you think that's going to happen? It's not going to happen. Okay, it's just not possible. We're gonna have to eat plant-based foods or kill off the majority of the population because of hunger. That's the only way, because you cannot sustain our current population with only meat, especially if you get rid of factory farming. It is impossible. It is physically impossible. People say that vegans are on this like moral high ground. Well, this person is on their moral high ground because, oh, I'm against factory farming. So you can say that. You can say you're against factory farming while you are okay with the slaughter of animals, as long as they, had a little bit of a chance to run around a little bit in their short lives before they get slaughtered. But us vegans saying that we don't want to kill animals, period, that's being on the moral high ground.
It's local butchers that are locally sourced.
How expensive are those local farmers markets and local butchers? And how, again, do you plan on feeding our population with locally sourced meats?
Within our care, presumably on an ethical farm, I think we can all agree, like I said, factory farming, unethical. But on an ethical farm, we are taking the animals into our own care. We are giving them that guarantee of being fed today.
Oh my God. Stop with trying to be this moral person when you are literally promoting a carnivore diet. I'm sorry, but no. Animals in the wild, they could have all the, no, you don't care about the animals. Let's just call a spade a spade. You do not care about the animals. You are just pretending to care about the animals, and you're trying to justify your diet. Okay, you're working backwards from the conclusion that, oh, carnivore diet is great. This is like the way that I eat. This is the moral way to eat. You're working backwards from that conclusion. You're trying to justify your diet by saying all of these things in our care that can be loved and nourished, taken care of. And then what? Finish that sentence, and then what happens to them? What happens to them after? You love them and you nourish them and you take care of them, and then you put a knife to their throat.
They have that shelter today. We have that bond with them today. And we create this beautiful relationship where we understand that this animal will nourish us.
Listen to the language they use. Nourish us. Oh, we have this bond with them today. They help us become nourished. Okay, so if they were put on this earth for simply our nourishment, then why do they feel suffering? Why do they feel pain? Why do they get scared? Why do they run away from us? Why is it that they are extremely afraid Like, if that is the relationship that we have, then why do they not just willingly want to get slaughtered? They don't. They are afraid. Okay? They are terrified. And it is really just psychotic that she keeps mentioning, oh, we can love them and we can care for them, whilst leaving out conveniently the last part where you have to put a knife to their throat and kill them. Do you do that to someone you love? Like, it doesn't make sense.
But when it comes to eating animals for food, that is a reality that has been with us for the beginning of our existence.
This is called appeal to nature fallacy, appeal to nature or appeal to tradition fallacy. We've been doing it forever. We've been doing it for millions of years. This is how it's always been. Therefore, it's correct. This is not a good argument. We've been doing lots of things for many years that we've decided no more. Okay? Just because there's something that we've been doing for a long time doesn't make it moral, doesn't make it justified.
For me, when it was too far is when I lost my period. I can't have children if I don't have a period. So I became infertile. And do you know what the vegan community told me? That's fine. That's actually a sign of health and that's totally normal.
This is another huge red flag that this person was probably most likely following a raw plant-based diet, or at least following a very restrictive plant-based diet, because I've never seen anyone in the vegan community say that it is completely normal to lose your period other than in the raw movement. Okay, the raw plant-based movement is known for saying crazy shit like this, which is why I do not support the raw plant-based movement, which is why I always talk against it, because of crap like this. Okay, all of a sudden, all the vegans, we're all grouped in with these raw plant-based eaters that do not follow science, that believe in all this pseudoscience, that tell people that it's completely okay to lose your period, and then now all of a sudden everyone thinks that that is what vegans believe as a whole. It is not normal to lose your period. It is not okay or healthy to lose your period. And it is very much something that you need to get checked if you lose your period. Okay. And I know that all the vegans that I know would also tell you the same thing. Okay. So to me, if she's saying, oh, the vegan community told me that it's completely fine to lose my period, what kind of vegans were you listening to? And also, why are you listening to the vegan community when you should be going to a doctor? Okay, red flags, okay? Instead of going to a doctor, you are relying on these online gurus, online people to tell you what to eat, tell you what's okay, okay? Because if you go to any sort of credible doctor, anyone that is a professional, they would not tell you that, oh yes, losing your period is a sign of health. Again, this tells me that this person was not following good science-based advice. Instead, she was following probably internet gurus.
Animal rights are just as important as human rights.
All the carnivores or all the meat eaters just walked up, other than the one raw carnivore girl. So you believe that animal rights are just as important as human rights, but you think that it's completely okay and ethical to kill animals.
I do agree with the standpoint of respecting an animal's right. It's an individual, and I kind of make that same connection when it comes to hunting as well. And so, especially, you utilize like all,
you don't take more than what you need. You use as much as you absolutely possibly can, and you do pay your respect.
Just the whole pay your respect. What do you do to pay your respect? Do you say a prayer as you stab your victim in the throat? What exactly do you do to pay your respect? It's just say you eat meat. Just say you eat meat because that's how you were raised. That's just what I do. Don't add this fluff. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you are killing the animal that doesn't want to die, okay? I mean, even if we were to say that we need to eat animals to survive, you could say that that's just what we do for survival, right? That's just what we do for survival. It's not for respect. It's not because we respect the animal. It's because you're just doing that to eat. If I had to kill another person right now to survive myself, would I just pretend that I so respect this person? No, it's because I wanted to survive.
I want to jump in and say that killing is in no way showing respect. When you kill an animal, it is not a way to pay your respects. I often think, how would I feel if I was suddenly taken away from my family and all I know, my wife is taken from me?
It's not a matter of disrespect. It's a matter of heritage. And I'm sure as you guys can relate to in some aspects, when you're raised a certain way, you continue that. If it works for you, you're healthy doing it, it's going to be what you continue to do.
You know what? He just said it right there. The video can end now. That's exactly what it is. This is why you eat meat. It's not because of respect and, circle of life and top of the food chain. Oh my God, I love these animals so much. I respect them so much that I want to take care of them until I slit them in the throat. It's none of that. It's just your traditions, whatever you were brought up doing, or whatever you have normalized into your life because of the situation that you were brought up in. It is nothing deeper than that, okay? You never sat down and actually made these decisions by weighing out the pros and cons, by weighing out the ethical elements, by having these philosophical discussions. You only did them because you were just brought into that life. That's it. At least this guy can admit it.
And eventually, yeah, I might get to harvest my buck for the year.
I mean, I appreciate that that's not what it's about for you, but even like the way you're speaking about these animals, that you're going to harvest them, shows to me that there's some sort of disconnect there, that you're not,
No, it's not a
acknowledging
disconnect at
them
all.
as the individuals that they
No,
are.
it's not a disconnect at all.
It is a disconnect because you're using terms like harvest. You're not using terms like kill and slaughter, because that's exactly what you're doing.
So the way I see it is that if we are not using the animals for food, there is a chance that out in the wild they are being hunted, eaten, killed by other predators to be used as food at the end of the day. And
So someone's gonna eat them, someone's gonna kill them, so why not us do it? What kind of logic is that? First of all, there are plenty of animals that may not be eaten, and if they're in the wild, at least they're feeding the wild animals that actually cannot survive off of anything else other than the food that they, hunt. Whereas we can't, okay? We can't. This is just some major working backwards from your conclusion BS. Basically, it's completely okay and moral to eat animals. Let me find the reasons to fit that narrative. Instead of looking at the different reasons and different arguments and then coming up with your conclusion, you have come up with the conclusion first, which is eating animals is moral and just and great. And it is great because of all of these reasons that I've just made up.
I see it as like the scarcity of life is what gives our lives value, right? The fact that death is coming for all of us is what makes our lives so beautiful and meaningful.
Just because death is coming for all of us does not mean that we want to be killed. Like, I don't want to be killed. I know death is coming. I know death is inevitable, but I do not want to be slaughtered, especially under a system that does not care about me. Okay? Death is inevitable. So is murder justified because death is inevitable? No, you wouldn't say that about humans. But with animals, you think it's fine because you are speciesist. Okay? You're working within this speciesist framework.
I'm eating this with the utmost, highest sense of gratitude, knowing that this flesh came from a live animal, that this life had a sacrifice. It comes with a sacredness to it. And I'm trying to work towards more and more, using every single part of the animal, not only eating the meat, but like using as much as I can to honor the life of the animal.
Honor the life of the animal. God, that is a lot of mental gymnastics to come up with that. Just say you like eating this way because you think it's healthy for whatever reason. Stop with this, oh, I care so much about this animal. Do you really? Genuinely think, like if somebody said, okay, I love dogs so much, I honor dogs so much, I respect dogs so much, and then they also said in the same breath that they love eating dog meat, would you take them seriously? Would you take them seriously?
Veganism is for the privileged.
The carnivore girl says veganism is for the privileged. The irony.
I personally believe a vegan diet, if you actually want to thrive and be healthy on this lifestyle, it's not cheap. It is not.
That's absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. First of all, again, coming from the carnivore. Guys, even if you eat meat, seriously, gun to your head, what do you think is more expensive? If you say veganism, it's absolute garbage. Some of the cheapest foods out there are plant-based foods. Grains, beans, legumes, different types of vegetables, fruits, pasta. These are some of the cheapest foods out there. Following a carnivore diet is extremely expensive, especially, again, coming from these people that say they're against factory farming. Do you think that non-factory farmed meat is cheap? I haven't eaten meat for over 10 years, but I know it is not cheap.
Being a carnivore, eating only meat, eating only animal foods, my grocery bill is less than when I was shopping for vegan.
What were you eating though when you were vegan? Again, leaving out the details. What were you eating when you were shopping for vegan? What exactly were you eating? And it's also just so funny because if you look at the countries that eat the most amount of meat, they're usually very affluent countries. And when countries start becoming more affluent, they tend to start eating more meat. Korea is a perfect example. I'm from Korea. I was born there. And my parents were raised in Korea as well. And when they were young, Korea was a bit of a poor country. Post-Korean War, definitely not the Korea it is today. It was a developing country when they were young. And they would always tell me stories about how they never ate a lot of meat growing up. They never ate a lot of animal products growing up. And now that Korea is a much more developed country, there's tons of meat, tons of animal products because it is for the privileged. Meat is for the privileged. I hate this concept where people try to flip the reality. Eating less animal foods, eating more plant-based foods is not for the privileged, okay? That being said, I do believe that in order to care about these sort of justice issues, such as veganism, animal rights, I do believe you have to be in a bit of a privileged position to have that kind of care, have that kind of drive, right? Because if you are just trying to survive every day, you're trying to put food on the table, you're trying to feed your kids and do all of that, your mind is occupied and you don't really have the kind of mental capacity or even maybe the physical capacity to think about, you know, these kind of justice issues. So I do think you have to be in a privileged position to even consider going vegan and things like that. But in terms of actual money, in terms of actual cost of plant-based foods versus animal foods, plant-based foods are 100% cheaper.
All of these starches, the grocery bills add up. So that's why I do believe that you do have to be quite privileged, especially if you want to feed your family as well, to be able to afford a vegan diet and also thrive on it.
And also the only reason why animal foods are like relatively cheap is because, again, of factory farming that makes it more efficient and cheaper. And also meat and dairy industries are very heavily subsidized by governments. So if you actually look at the real cost of meat and dairy and animal products, it's much higher. I mean, literally, let's just use some common sense, right? You can farm plant-based foods like beans, legumes, grains, all that. And then you can eat those foods directly, okay, giving us the calories directly. Or you can farm for those foods, then feed those foods, tons of those foods to animals to fatten them up, which also requires tons more water, right? Because they're eating, they're drinking water, also requires a lot of cleaning, taking care. You know how it is to take care of an animal. There's like, you know, a lot of things necessary. All of that involved adds cost. Plus, again, all the food that they eat. And then when you eat that meat, that actually translates to a much smaller amount of food. So just looking at that alone, common sense should just tell you, yes, it is much more expensive to eat an animal-based diet. All right, you guys, I kind of like jumped all over the place. So hopefully my editing will not be that difficult. That was a bit difficult for me to react to because there was just so much garbage that it was hard for me to react. If there are specific timestamps that you actually want me to react to this properly, I could do this. Or if there's any other video you want me to react to, let me know and I will try my best. But yeah, that was really tough. I just kind of on a time crunch and it was hard for me to like react to everything. Next time I'm probably just gonna literally have to watch the whole video, you know, front to back and just react to everything. But I also speak too much, so I think that's the problem. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction video. Let me know down below your thoughts on any of these topics that we discussed. Yeah, very frustrating video indeed. I will link my Vegan Talks playlist below. It's basically a playlist where I talk about vegan topics and respond to videos like this and so on and so forth. So check that playlist out. I'll link that below. If you enjoy this sort of video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Make sure you check out my trips that are linked below, my trip to the Canadian Rockies and also to Korea that's happening this year in 2025. And also make sure you check out the Bold bundle. It is only available until January 4th. And again, it's only $50 for 130 plant-based ebooks, guides, and courses. So it's a 99% discount, so you don't want to miss it. Check it out. The link is below. Thank you so much for watching, you guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!